Hello, it's Early from Hi-Fi Town and Nowadays American Instruments. I'm selling the very last one of these that we've had probably for well over 30 years. And it's such a late piece of cinema era audio history. I wanted to document it in this short video. And I'll be posting a separate audio demonstration using my usual music selections, since that's much easier to please the copyright robots. Anyway, I wanted to share a little history that I know about Emilar, and I'm sure many of you can fill in much better detail and accuracy in the comments below. But back in the 80s and 90s, these would occasionally trickle in alongside much larger acquisitions of, Altec, JBL, RCA, the stuff from the 1940s. And I always thought Emilar was such a fascinating brand with that bold, space-age looking vinyl decal on the front. And I just remember asking my father, Walt, about the stuff, about them, and why is it such good quality, and why is nobody into this stuff? And this is like back in the 80s and 90s. So anyway, back by the mid to late 1970s, relatively new professional theater equipment was being built compared to the massive expansion and build out back in the 50s and 60s. So companies like this Emilar represented the closing era of that stuff, and of like 2-channel audio being used in theaters, and voice of the theater type stuff. And as I understand it, Emilar was founded in the mid 70s by Renkus. I think it might have been Harro Renkus. I'm not sure. Anyway, I think he was one of the really good engineers to come into Altec in the later era, probably in the 1960s sometime in there. And, throughout the 50s, Altec was stagnant. They were still making stuff like Jim Lansing had kind of left them with by the mid-40s. I mean, they were a pre-war era company just stamping out good quality audio with 1930s designs. And Renkus was one of the people who kind of modernized a little bit to kind of compete with JBL and some of the other companies. And one of the things I think he was involved with was in the late 60s, he did the Symbiotik diaphragm, which is like a 2-part diaphragm for the 802. It had a like a Mylar surround coupled to the aluminum center, and they marketed that as the Symbiotik. It could take more power and sound a little bit smoother in some of the mid-range, sound a little smoother in the upper highs. And but they rolled off, and they weren't real pop. I don't think it was a big hit for Altec. They only made them a little while, and then they phased out, and they're really hard to find nowadays. But at some point, he left, and he founded this company called Emilar in the mid-1970s. And they had a whole lineup of stuff. I'm going to flip through the catalog pages so you can kind of see it in this video. But might not be exactly synchronized with this talk. I'm sorry. But some of the stuff that you'll see is obviously some of it's JBL inspired, some of it's Altec inspired. It's really heavy duty. The horns are just incredibly heavy. I'm going to pick one up here and I'm going to measure it with the caliper, and you're just going to see how meaty this thing is. And it doesn't ring like the 811s ring. They're made out of thin metal, much different design. This is probably basically an exponential. I mean, they marketed this as an exponential horn, and probably it is. I would refer to it more as a biradial, as it's got some just fairly complex geometry. It's also short. It goes low. It's very compact. It doesn't ring because of these giant ridges that I'm going to show here. And then to couple that with the very high-tech Symbiotik diaphragm. So back in the mid-70s when Emilar first came out, they actually had a silicone type of membrane on the diaphragm, and that diaphragm was really smooth, but it rolled off early, like at around 12,000 hertz or so. And that was a limitation and a problem with their product. I haven't listened to one recently. But as the company went on, their products were just really, as you can see, check out this price list. I mean, these prices were not bad. They were really competitive, and I think they probably had some financial troubles. And at some point, Renkus leaves Emilar, and he founds Renkus-Heinz with his son, which is another company working more on compression drivers. some point in the early 80s, Renkus, I guess, feels bad or something, tries to come back and save the company in the early 80s. And that's when this horn was from, I think, late 70s, early 80s, somewhere in there. And it has the later driver. What he did was he brought his better compression diaphragm technology and brought it to Emilar, and it was it went up higher. So this driver actually reaches a lot higher. So I'm going to call this a more desirable version of the Emilar driver. Their older stuff looks very cool though, and it's all just kind of neat to find. Sometimes you can get good deals on it. Most of the time though, now people know these things are uncommon. I mean, compared to Altec stuff of the era, this is actually getting somewhat less common. Obviously, the thing that draws everybody to these is their extreme bow tie shape, and it's kind of basically a chopped off biradial horn in the front. It's a little short, and it's actually not the first one of these to be made. I'm going to try to pull up a old 1940s advertisement of by Raycon. Back in the very, very early hi-fi days, they actually made a horn that was shaped exactly like this, and I wish I could find one of those and compare it, but it's just really interesting. That kind of leaves these as really the only extreme vintage bow tie horn that you can find. And they made the EH800 like this one, and they made the EH500. And I don't know, people like both. The 800 is really cool. It's just small, it's nice, it's heavy, it doesn't ring. And so, yeah, I just wanted to kind of cover this very unique bit of history. The Emilar made all sorts of stuff, complete systems, and it was also, in the very late days, used to replace failing Altec stuff in the old theaters, and that's when it came to us. So now that all of this is ancient history, and this stuff is, hitting way above its weight in quality and, build quality. This stuff was made in California in the 70s when they were still able to kind of draw on aerospace infrastructure and make really heavy metal castings. And I really think that Renkus was really driving the quality here, or whoever was at the company was saying, like, let's make something better than JBL would do, and definitely, obviously, better than Altec would do. And they came up with this really nice stuff. So it's really cool history. And they made a bullet tweeter. They made some larger, I think they made some larger drivers, possibly. I think the EC300 here. And I think their downfall really is what made them stand out, is the Symbiotik diaphragm. It's still not good for everybody. All aluminum diaphragms still go higher. And if you can find yourself an old diaphragm with low power handling, it's going to be smoother. It's going to go higher. It's just going to sound less, less harsh. And so even this stuff, and then even though these horns are incredibly good for what they are, they still have a significant coloration. So I'm still like really a proponent of multi-cell horns of exponential expansion. So, yeah, I think, if you ever see any of these out in the wild, grab them. They're not going to last long. People are looking for them. They make really good 2-channel systems, and they don't take up a lot of room. So anyway, early at Hi-Fi Town here, just showing off a piece of unique history, and pardon the voiceover format. For these new shorts these new information videos I'm going to be shooting, I wanted to kind of pack more information in. So thanks for watching, and subscribe, and let me know if you want to see more videos like this. Take care.